Welcome to DrumTalk. And today we're going to talk about crash cymbals. Now, choosing a crash cymbal is definitely a personal choice. So we're going to talk about my journey into choosing a crash cymbal. Let's first start off with the fact that my journey of choosing crash cymbals has changed over the years. Now, I was never one of those guys that used really heavy cymbals, but I have had heavier crash cymbals than I use today. So let's take the progression backwards from where I'm at presently. Most of my videos you're seeing me using PAISTE cymbals. And my PAISTE cymbals are B8 cymbals. And B8 cymbals have a nice bright sound to them. The interesting thing about the giant beats, which is the cymbals that I'm touching right now, this 20-inch giant beat, is the giant beats are thin, and because of their thinness, it seems to be a little bit deeper or darker. And darker is usually associated with lower in pitch. Now, another thing that's associated with lower in pitch is how big the cymbal is. And this is why a lot of players want to go to bigger cymbals for crashes, because everybody's looking for a darker sound, a lower pitch sound. So I found with the PAISTE giant beats and the 20-inch multi cymbal, and by the way, all the giant beats that are called multi, from my 24 to my 20 to an 18, if you have an 18 multi, and mine's a thin, by the way, not a multi, they are all designed to be rides and crashes. Same with the big beat ride right here. This big beat ride is really a multi, which means I can crash on it. By the way, beautiful crash cymbals. Okay? Now, my journey into crash cymbals started with smaller cymbals, and this is a 16-inch PAISTE 2002. The 16-inch cymbals got a higher pitch. And at one point, way back in the 90s, I got into really small crash cymbals. And this is what I have left of my small crash cymbals. This is a 15-inch SABIAN AAX Studio Crash. So let me pull it up. It's a very fast, quick crash cymbal. It's quick. It's thin. The studio crashes and the AAX in general, Sabian's AAX cymbals were kind of made around the same time as the A Custom, the Zildjian A Customs. At that time, Sabians were about $15 cheaper. I think today Sabians may be $15 more than the A Customs. I don't know. The pricing of Zildjians and Sabians have leveled off, and Sabians may even cost more than some of the Zildjians of the day in comparable ranges. But I was really big into the 15-inch thin studio crash. My first crash was a 16-inch crash. I've talked about in my PAISTE videos that my first PAISTE crash was a 505 crash, very similar to this. These are the kind of sounds I like. Quick, get out of the way crashes. My first Zildjian crash was an A Zildjian 16-inch thin crash. And the thin crash, again, I was looking for that quick response. So my first journey into crash cymbals were smaller cymbals. Now, it wasn't until I got into Sabians and I picked out my first set of Sabian cymbals that I found dark crashes. And this is one of the Sabian dark crashes. This is a Sabian 17-inch thin crash. And my first set of Sabian cymbals had a 17-inch thin crash and a 18-inch sound control crash ride, which was an 18-inch. It's about 1,350 grams. And this is not the original one I had, but this is like the one I have. The original one my friend Pat O'Donnell has. I don't think I'm ever going to get it back that I lost in a trade, but that's the sound that I heard when I played these in Manny's Music with my brother back in 1988. My brother Nick bought me these cymbals, and that was the sound I heard with this crash. And I just said, that's the sound. Now, how did I know it was the sound? Well, it also went with the ride cymbal. And the ride cymbal I was using at the time was a 19-inch medium heavy ride, which is totally different than this. It had a little more ping to it. And those cymbals together really created the set that I would play for a very long period of time. Eventually, I would add an AAX thin studio crash 14-inch. I would add the 15-inch AAX crash. And I really was starting to dig that AAX sound. So I eventually picked up another AAX crash. And this is about 2002. And my friend Pat O'Donnell helped me get this cymbal. And this is a AAX Studio Crash 19-inch. Not brilliant. And I was going for bigger cymbals. So my crash cymbals have been going from starting with 16 small thin crash cymbals and moving right on up into the 17, 18, 19-inch crash range. And that's kind of where I stayed. I was a dark cymbal guy. My Sabians were dark cymbals. And then, if you've watched my Zildjian video, you know I got into the Caropes. And this is the 19-inch Carope. The 19-inch Carope fits perfectly with the HHs. It also fits with the AAX crash. And the one thing I noticed about all my cymbals is, in actuality, if I put the PAISTE ride up with an AAX crash and a Carope, it still sounds like me playing, and they still sound like they belong. Because my ears hear cymbals, and this is something that I don't know if all you guys figured this out, but when I play a cymbal in a store, I'm hearing that ride sound. And will it match my crash? As bright as this 2002 big beat ride is, it's still thin enough and dark enough to go with these crash cymbals. So crashes are a preference, and it's your preference, and it's what fits your playing style. Now, the way I hit crash cymbals is with a glancing blow. Even when I'm hitting down on the cymbal, I'm not hitting through it. There are guys that hit crash cymbals like this, and they come through the cymbal. That's how you crack cymbals. And I have my days when I'm hitting really hard where I might do that, and I've cracked a few. But I try to hit my crash cymbals where it comes off the cymbal with a glancing blow. Crash cymbal journey is really going to depend on the cymbals you use. Now, I've always tried to stay in the same families. Today, when we talk about B20 cymbals, Sabians are B20 cymbals, PAISTEs are B20 cymbals if you're talking about 602s and PAISTE 20s. If you're talking about Zildjians or Sabians Meinl's got a B20 cymbal. Okay, I try to stay in the same families, but I'm telling you that once your ear picks your ride cymbal out and that ride cymbal sound you go for, you will find that most of your cymbals will interchange. Now, here's where I have problems. I don't like heavy crash cymbals. And why? Not because they don't project. If you're playing in a big hall and you need to get to the back of the room, a thicker, heavier crash cymbal is the way to do it. The problem is I don't feel like I have the finesse on a heavy crash cymbal. So in my playing style, I like to get more of the nuances out of the cymbals. So how do I choose the best crash cymbal? The best crash cymbal is a cymbal that matches my ride cymbal and my hi-hats. And if you're not sure and you're going to buy crash cymbals, bring your cymbals with you to the music store. That's what I used to do when I was younger. Today, it's not as important, okay, for me, because I kind of know what my sound is. And by the way, I bought all my PAISTEs online. I listened at Memphis Drum Shop. That's one of the beauties that we have today with the internet, is you can go to a place like Memphis Drum Shop and listen to cymbals and get in the ballpark. This 19-inch Crope I bought from Interstate Music online. I never played it, but I knew the family of cymbal we were getting. So consistency today is something that we've got. We've got a much more consistent cymbal making process. So will my 19-inch Crope sound a little different than somebody else's 19-inch Crope? Yes. But in actuality, they're going to be darn close. You know, they're going to have darn close characteristics. Same thing with the PAISTEs, are very close. I mean, the PAISTEs are almost exact. SABIAN's the same thing. Now, back in the 70s and 80s, not so much. Okay, you still had a lot of inconsistencies in the manufacturing process. So when you're looking at older cymbals, it's really important you play them. That's why I have a problem buying an old used cymbal on eBay, especially when I see one that's way overpriced. If somebody's selling old Istanbul K rides and crashes, okay, I need to hear it. I need to hear it in a big enough room and a well-recorded room, okay, or I need to be in the room myself with what I'm going to be doing with it. Because in actuality, those cymbals could be real dogs and you spend a lot of money on. Where today's cymbals, the newer manufacturing processes, you got a lot of consistency. So, a word of advice for choosing a crash cymbal: choose ones that match your setup. Find your ride that you like, find your hats that you like, then find crashes that match it. Think about the rooms you play in the most. If you're playing in your small bedroom studio, you know, big crashes are going to kill it. You're going to be blowing it out. Okay, you need smaller cymbals. And when I play a smaller room, I bring out smaller cymbals. When I'm playing a big auditorium, I'll have bigger cymbals. Okay, my room in my studio is 17 by 19, so this is big enough for the big crashes worked. But I had that 19-inch AAX crash right here on my wife's album that I recorded in a bedroom studio in Coral Springs, Florida, and I had to put this away a lot of times because it was too big. An 11 by 11 square type room, it was really too big for it. So that's another aspect of it, is knowing the room you're playing in. So having a variety of cymbals is a good idea. I find thinner cymbals respond better and are darker, meaning lower in pitch. Bigger cymbals are even lower in pitch, okay? And heavier cymbals are going to get you projection. If you crack and break cymbals, heavier cymbals are the way to go. When you're hitting cymbals, you want to hit with a glancing blow, okay? And one of the things I practice is playing lighter on everything, lighter playing. So I'm using an iPad today to record this. And even when I was doing the heavy rock crashing ride thing, which I do a lot of times in church, you can see I was holding back enough where my kick and snare can be heard. Okay? And why? Because I'm playing to the room. And that's the key thing with every cymbal. If you're just a guy that wants to play at one volume level and bash, you will break cymbals. There's no doubt about it, because you're hitting so hard all the time. First time I was in a recording studio, I learned a valuable lesson from the engineer. I had a set of rude hi-hat cymbals, and he kept saying to me, don't play your hi-hats so loud. I want to hear the kick and the snare, and I want the hi-hats really quiet. So what did I practice? I practiced the same thing, playing my hi-hats quiet and my kick and snare loud. Instead of there's a place for that sometimes, but when you're trying to get a track on a ballad or a straight rock tune and you don't want the hi-hats to get in the way, you don't beat on it as hard. If you don't want your crash cymbals to get in the way, then you don't want to beat on them as hard either. This is why when I play in church, I set my overhead mics to be the loudest thing in my ears. Why is that? Because when I start doing I know I got to pull that crash ride cymbal back so I'm not overblowing my ears out. If that's the loudest thing in my headphones, that'll start hurting my ears. I know, back off the crashes. So I play with a lighter touch. Still have the aggression on the kick and the snare that's required for the song, but I pull back on the crash cymbals. This is my way of EQing myself, or mixing myself is actually what I'm doing. I'm mixing myself in my in-ear monitors. So these are some little techniques for playing cymbals a little differently. Crash cymbals are a preference, small or big, but one thing you can tell, I love cymbals, so I have lots of different cymbals to play and lots of different cymbals to choose from. I hope this drum talk was fun and informative to you. Have a great day.